Due diligence is so important because, like I said, so many people come to me after a deal has gone bad. I do classes on due diligence. Guys, listen to me before you jump into this. If that deal doesn't work out, guess what? There's going to be another one. Don't worry about it.
So with your due diligence, how did you come up with a? I'm assuming you have some kind of checklist. Did you just Google a checklist, or How did you gather your information?
Well, that due diligence is just something that has evolved over time, and as we've done things and realized things work better than others. Um, with where we sit with the Wealth Club, one of the unfortunate things that happens, having the Wealth Club, is a lot of people come to me after deals have gone bad because they didn't know anything about due diligence, and I'm very guilty of that myself, because in the early years, now what I talk about when we started, and we've been doing this full time for 10 years, a little over 10 years. But I really actually bought my first rental properties back in 2002, and bought some single families. Then we bought an 8-unit, we bought a 10-unit back 2008, 2009. And the problem was, I was in corporate America, and I thought I was a smart guy because I was the boss, but I didn't know anything about real estate. But I thought I did. I was only kidding myself, and we did some really bad deals, and we lost a lot of money, and I didn't even know what due diligence was. I was like the world's worst at that. And so I learned with a lot of scars on my body over time. And so, but now, due diligence is so important because, like I said, so many people come to me after a deal has gone bad. And I do classes on due diligence. Guys, listen to me before you jump into this. If that deal doesn't work out, guess what? There's going to be another one. Don't worry about it. But people get excited. People want to think with their emotions in business, and it's the worst thing that we can do. We've got to think with our heads in business. And so, when we start vetting a deal, actually, I was just on a phone call right before this interview with someone about a deal that they're thinking about lending on, and I'm going, okay, well, let's look at the scenario here. Let's And I laid out a whole bunch of stuff for him. I said, call me back this afternoon after you think about this stuff. But we have to vet, if we're going to be lending on a deal, we've got to vet the people that we're working with. That's first and foremost. If you're investing with someone, you've got to vet that person. You've got to find out who that person is. You've got to find out if they have a performance record, if they've worked with other people. Are they willing to give you references? There's a lot of different ways that you can go about finding out about individuals before you jump into something. And depending on what they're bringing to you, whatever that deal is, secondly, then we have to look at that deal. If they want you to lend on a deal that they're going to flip, well, we need to stick with our traditional numbers to find out, to make sure that deal is going to support the money that you're lending them. And oftentimes nobody even looks at that. People don't know how to look at that, and they'll run a deal by me, and I'm like, if you're lend on that deal, this deal's like at 85%, and they want to flip this deal. So let's look at all the holding costs, all the behind the scenes costs that's going to come out of this. There's not going to be any money left at the end. And what happens if if they're losing money and they don't want to pay you anymore? So it's really, really important that we put systems in place to do that. And if we don't have systems in place, we find people that we can work with that will help us and teach us how to do that. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Number one, because that was the one thing I never did, is I didn't ask for help when I was young and foolish, very foolish. Never be afraid to ask for help in figuring that stuff out. There's people out there. We help lots of our investors out in doing their due diligence. And as you start to learn how to do that, then you put those systems in place that work for you. And it goes back to what I said earlier. What are your standards? What is your criteria? If you're going to lend on a deal, you've got to have standards of how you're lending. You've got to have a criteria by which you follow that you're going to lend your money out. I mean, if someone wants to borrow money from us, great. But our standards are our standards. I mean, this is how we lend. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't, then you'll need to find somebody
You
else.
ever
But
gone
we
out of
stick with
that?
our numbers.
You ever gone out of your standards?
We can move our standards a little bit sometimes, depending on a deal, because all deals are different. And and sometimes you can change that criteria just a little bit to fit into a deal if you're still very comfortable that deal is going to do well. And I think one of the things that gives me an advantage in that scenario is because I have done so many flips and bought a lot of rental properties. I have a very good tolerance for what I think is going to work and what's not. Then we're also depending on who the person is bringing the opportunity to us. If this is somebody that's brand new, I might not have that confidence in someone that's been doing it for a while. So that there's all those. There's going to be different scenarios every time, but if you've got to set those standards to start off with, then based on the deal, can you move your criteria a little bit one way or the other? Sometimes you can. I truly think sometimes you can, and sometimes we do.